Tanto scusate qualche minuto di ritardo nel collegarmi, ho avuto qualche impiccio con i sistemi. Chi è che gestisce traffico? Eccomi.
Ecco qua. Ok, siamo pronti allora. Welcome to all of you, distinguished guests and participants, colleagues and students. I'm honored, I'm Riccardo Redaelli from the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart of Milano. I'm honored to moderate this remarkable seminar, not only for the renowned and important speakers we have here, but also because after more than 1 year webinar on all possible platforms, we are here in person, face to face, seeing physically some of the speakers and colleagues, and seeing physically, not only via web, our colleagues. And also, moreover, we have the pleasure to have some students, despite in a very limited numbers, but still real students, that for a professor is always something very pleaseful. For a university, it's extremely important to return to face-to-face real-life activities. So we are here for this seminar on the new role of the Mediterranean as an energy and commercial hub. I'm honored to give the floor for the institutional welcomes to my rector, Professor Franco Anelli, the rector of the Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore.
Thank you, Professor Redaelli, and I wish extend my warmest gratitude, first of all, to Rear Admiral Fabio Agostini, and to the keynote speakers, Dr. Lapo Pistelli, Ambassador Stefano Sonnino, Dr. Fabio Tambone, and Professor Paolo Selleri. And of course, to all the people who are following us online, and especially I add to the students that are attending to the meeting in our hall. I wish to thank to Operation UNAVFOR Med Irini, here represented by its commander, Admiral Agostini, for having collaborated in the organization of this event. Within the Libyan peace process, in order to favor a peaceful solution of the political and military crisis that in that country, on February 2020, the Foreign Affairs Council of the European Union decided to launch a new operation in the Mediterranean, focused on the implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions on the arms embargo on Libya. That happened while in the same days in which were closing the previous naval Operation Sophia. The new operation, named UNAVFOR Med Irini, was thus launched on March 31 and extended to from March 31, 2020, and extended to March 2023. Its core task is the implementation of the UN arms embargo on Libya through the use of aerial, satellite, and maritime assets. The particular in the mission is mandated to carry out inspection of vessels on the high seas off the coast of Libya, suspected to be carrying arms or related material to and from Libya, in accordance with United Nations Security Council Resolution 2292. In addition to monitoring violation perpetrated via aerial and land routes. As secondary task, the mission also monitors and gathers information on illicit export from Libya of petroleum, crude oil, and refined petroleum, contributes to the capacity building of training of the Libyan Coast Guard and Navy, contributes to the disruption of the business model of the human smuggling and trafficking networks through information gathering and patrolling by planes. This seminar is a part of the project The Road to ShadeMed. It is a series of webinars and events which anticipate the topics of discussion of the General ShadeMed Conference. ShadeMed is a forum organized by the Irini Mission where representatives from different nations and organizations interested in the Mediterranean region can meet to reach common aims. Far more than a simple international meeting, ShadeMed Conference represents a unique opportunity to meet, to exchange good practice, and to share information and experiences among many and different actors involved in the Mediterranean area. ShadeMed aims at the deconflicting and, where possible, coordinating military and civilian resources, operation and distant industry practices to achieve the maximum efficiency and effectiveness for all. During the last 2 decades, the Mediterranean basin has gained a sort of new centrality within the international dynamics. However, this centrality has often been the result of political and military crises and proxy wars among regional and international powers. All along the basin, there are at play multiple centrifugal forces that undermine these state structures, in particular, but not exclusively, along the southern bank. The explosion of violent civil wars in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, the increase of tensions following the disappointing results of the so-called Arab Springs, the rise in the role and visibility of competing non-state jihadist movements, the return of Russian activism and the growth of a violent induced polarization between Shiites and Sunnis are all signs of a marked destabilization of the security matters of the Middle Eastern region. In addition, European public opinions have been induced to focus on the problem of migrants moving from the African continent, a factor that has deeply influenced European domestic politics and the European vision towards the Mediterranean. All these conflicts and crises have in some ways hidden the economic and commercial evolving trends within the basin, such as the Mediterranean role in the global trades or the creation of new commercial corridors, as the Chinese Road and Belt Initiative, which are forging a new centrality of the Mediterranean, also from the geoeconomic and maritime economy perspectives. In fact, these sea, despite accounting for only 1% of the world's oceans, generates around 15% of global maritime traffic and 20% of related economic value, and that makes it a fundamental global socio-economic crossroad. Even from energy perspective, our basin is playing a more significant role, thanks to the discovery of natural gas giant fields in the eastern Mediterranean. The United States Geological Survey estimates that the Levant Basin contains a big quantity of technical recoverable gas. The exploitation plays therefore an extremely important geoeconomic role. It is a technical and economic effort that sees Eni as one of the leading European companies involved, as Dr. Lapo Pistelli, Director of Public Affairs of Eni, will tell us today. The present seminar wishes to focus specifically on that, on the role that the Mediterranean Sea is playing from commercial, energy and maritime role, a role which a country like Italy cannot ignore. On the contrary, it is fundamental for us to promote a more balanced and holistic vision of our basin, stimulating the European Union to refocus towards the Mediterranean. I think that anyone here can agree on the fact that the divergence in political priorities and in perception of challenges within the enlarged borders of the Union, the economic crisis of the last decades and the effect of the pandemic has weakened any attempt to consistently articulate an European regional security project, giving rooms to national logics that have exposed the Union to diverging policies, unilateral initiatives, and to a slowing of the traditional policies of engagements and support launched soon after the end of the Cold War. Italy should underline both in Europe and international level that this potential positive centrality of the Mediterranean, stressing the importance of creating a new long-term strategy to address the imbalances and the elements of instability present in the region. A vision based not only on the interest of some single actor, but a holistic vision that might promote a collective human security for all the Mediterranean peoples and for the areas gravitating around this sea. Indeed, the only rational answer to seismic epochal changes is trying to govern and to adapt them, not to ignore them. In this perspective, the Italian Church promoted just over a year ago an important international initiative titled Mediterraneo Frontiera di Pace. After this event in Bari, as Cardinal Bassetti reminded us, our work continues as we are inspired to broaden our concepts of internationalization and third mission of universities. I wish to recall, concluding my speech, what Pope Francis said in Bari about the Mediterranean's vocation to bring together peoples, to encourage their peaceful coexistence, and about the role of new generation. I quote, "The Mediterranean has a unique vocation in this regard. It is the sea of intermingling, culturally always open to encounter, dialogue, and mutual enculturation. To be part of the Mediterranean region is a source of extraordinary potential. May we not allow a spirit of nationalism to spread the opposite view, namely, that those states less accessible and geographically more isolated should be privileged. Dialogue alone enables us to come together, to overcome prejudices and stereotypes, to tell our stories and to come to know ourselves better. Dialogue is the word I heard today, conviviality. Young people, too, represent a special opportunity. When they are provided the resources and possibilities they need to take charge of their own future, they show that they are capable of generating a promising and hope-filled future." End of the quotation. I do believe that your work today and the work of the mission, Irini, and the debate that will follow will give a strong help in the direction opened by the words of the Pope. Thank you and have a good work, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Rector, for your words and also because you frame with your introductory remarks the main topics and issues of the debate today. Following, and now it's time for Admiral, the operational commander of Operation EUNAV Form Med Irini, Ammiraglio Fabio Agostini. Admiral, the floor is yours for your introductory welcomes.
Good afternoon to all those that are following this webinar here in Milan and those online. It's an honor for me to be here today. Following the two previous successful webinars, today we are here for the third Road to ShadeMed event that will lead to the ShadeMed conference to be held in early autumn. First of all, let me thank Rector Professor Anelli to have decided to host this significant event in the Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore, and for his kind words, both about the operation I have the honor to command and about the ShadeMed in itself. Thanks also to Professor Radaelli and all the staff here in this prestigious university to have organized this event. Thanks also to our distinguished guests and speakers that have decided to share with us their view on the new role of the Mediterranean as an energy and commercial hub. Mediterranean Sea is an area with a very complex web of interrelations and very high rate of economic and cultural exchanges among historical and new players. It is a fulcrum between three continents, each one with its own peculiarities. It is a wide meeting point for different cultures, beliefs, and societies. The Mediterranean Sea is a space where we are witnesses contraction of a key commercial sectors as tourism and transport, challenges to the shipping community, but also the rethinking of energy choices. It is a semi-enclosed sea bordered by over 20 countries. Its coasts are home for more than 150 million inhabitants, a figure which doubled during the tourism season. The blue economy in the Mediterranean region has a total value estimated at $5.6 trillion and generate an annual economic value of $450 billion. In the Mediterranean Sea, there are more than 450 ports and terminals that together account for approximately the 30% of global seaborne trade in volume, 25% of scheduled service on containers, 30% of world oil flow, and 65% of the energy flow for the EU countries. And that make it a very fundamental global social economic crossroads. Furthermore, fisheries and aquaculture industry are key sectors that count an overall value of 4.1 billion euros and 353,000 direct jobs. Nevertheless, it remains the least integrated region in the world. In fact, some of the biggest economic disparities among neighboring regions globally are noted between the two shores of the Mediterranean Sea. Then, the stability of the area is an essential element for the global security and prosperity. It is a fact that a great number of world crises originate in the Mediterranean basin. The spread of Daesh, Libyan instability, the Syrian war, tension in Lebanon, terrorist fighters, militia, contractors, the migration crisis, and regional contentions. The basin provided then multiple strategic challenges significantly aggravated by the ongoing pandemic. In our digital age, we can easily forget how fragile the interconnected real global networks world can be. In the area, there are three of the 9 main maritime choke points in the world. To bring us on the earth, there are the events as the one happened last March. The motor vessel Evan Given blockade highlighted the risk faced by the shipping industry. A Lloyd List assessment of the losses due to the blockade of the Suez Canal estimate around 51 billion euros, about 10 million per day, without considering the collateral effect of this event. In this context, EUNAVFOR Med Irini is operating right at the earth of the Mediterranean Sea, with the main task to ensure the respect of United Nations arms embargo regarding Libya, but also to contribute to stem the legal flow of oil smuggling, human trafficking, and train the Libyan Coast Guard and Navy. Irini is but one component of a process involving politically, military, economic, and humanitarian tracks, agreed upon the Berlin Conference on Libya of early 2020. This process represents the European Union truly holistic approach to the solution of the long-lasting conflict in Libya. We work day by day to guarantee stability and security in the central Mediterranean, remaining equidistant from all the involved parties, granting a safe environment to the commercial sea traffic. In conclusion, I hope you will enjoy this fruitful and enriching exchange that will certainly occur today, and I invite all those that are following this event to continue to follow us during the forthcoming webinars that will accompany all of us to the main event of the year, the ShadeMed 21. I would like to invite the social media followers to comment freely and openly on the various topics that our excellent speaker will raise during their intervention. Your contribution will certainly be useful and will allow us to better develop our communication and our operational activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Admiral Agostini. Thank you for your words. Now we move to the core of our seminar with the 4 speakers debating on the new role of the Mediterranean as a hydrogen commercial hub. Let me just 2 minutes of introduction, saying that if you look to this basin, to the sea, is always in and out from history. And I apologize with the Greek historian Fernand Braudel for abusing his famous statement when he wrote "The Mediterranean Lives History," commenting when Braudel commented when the basin lost his centrality following the circumnavigation of Africa by Bartolomeo Diaz, and of course we changed the route towards India, and obviously with the discovery of America, which diverted the economic interest towards new horizon, leaving our basin in the hands of pirates. That event has been a significant change, but which, of course, should not surprise anyone. Power transformations always influence geographic perceptions. After all, as stated by Geraldine Otuatail, a famous geographer and expert of critical geopolitics, Otuatail wrote, "Geography is about power. Although often assumed to be innocent, the geography of the world is not a product of nature, but a product of history of struggle between competing authorities over the power to organize, occupy, and administer space." End of quotation. And therefore, our perception of the Mediterranean Sea changed accordingly throughout all our history. Just remember during the Cold War, when the Mediterranean was basically the southern flank of the alliance, of the NATO alliance. In the 90s, it progressively lost geopolitical relevance, since in this period, Washington began to consider China as the only real peer competitor and wanted to refocus, despite in a very confused and erratic way, if I may say, the pivot of their attention from Europe to the Asia-Pacific region. And I'm mentioning this global picture for underlying how it is impossible to understand any geopolitical change experienced by the sea, by the Mediterranean, without connecting it to the larger modification affecting the international system globally, and more specifically to the relation between the global and the regional dimensions. As my rector has already underlined during his introductory remarks, during the last decade, a series of events in the wider Mediterranean has changed again the perception we have of the sea, the perceived relevance of our region, which gain a sort of new centrality, especially due to the wars that broke out, riots, internal clashes within the Islamic world, migrations, the Chinese attempts to connect DC to the Belt and Road Initiative, the new important energy discovery offshore in the eastern part of the basin. However, if I may say, the most peculiar aspect of this rediscovered centrality lies in the fact that it appears not being a sought-after centrality, but instead a sort of unexpected, unintended centrality, a consequence of multiple crises that crossed the basin rather than the specific will of its regional actors. So there were two main consequences deriving from all that. The lack of any strong project to foster an inclusive security architecture and a holistic social fabric for the region. And the second consequence, already underlined by my rector, is the perception of the Mediterranean as an area of crisis and dangers has hidden its economic and commercial importance. And today we are focusing just on that, on the new role, on the economic, maritime and commercial importance of the Mediterranean as an energy and commercial hub, having remarkable speakers of great importance and competence, Ambassador Stefano Sannino, Dr. Lapo Pistelli, Dr. Fabio Tambone, and Professor Paolo Sellari. And the first speaker is the Ambassador Stefano Sannino, Secretary General of the European External Action Service in Brussels, connected via web. Ambassador, you have the floor.
To the organizer of this seminar, and to the rector, to Admiral Agostini. It's a pleasure to be again with you for the second year, and I hope that it's a good tradition that we can keep. Let me start maybe with a brief overall outlook on the engagement of the European Union in the Mediterranean southern neighborhood. The relationship between the EU and the southern Mediterranean countries is marked essentially by the geographical proximity, but also by the many interests and challenges that the two regions share in common, from security and counterterrorism to governance and demographic issues, from trade routes to energy, and certainly not last, migration. In 1995, the Barcelona Declaration was signed between the European Union and the Southern Mediterranean countries with the aim of creating an area of shared prosperity in the Mediterranean region. Despite the optimism and also the hopes that the launch of the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership created, and the emergence of the Arab Spring in 2011, and also the hopes that were linked to this, the situation in the region is still far from reaching the objective set 25 years ago in Barcelona, and far from realizing the hopes that were expressed 10 years ago by the populations in the 2011 uprisings. Most importantly, the gap between the two shores of the Mediterranean remain very wide, and in some respect this is growing. On average, the European Union is 8 times more wealthy in terms of GDP per capita than the southern shore of the Mediterranean, with the socioeconomic impact of the COVID-19 crisis, this has become even more evident. More than a quarter of the population in the region is under 25, and up to 40% in some countries, with unemployment more than doubled because of the present economic crisis. The southern neighborhood is warming 20% faster than the rest of the world, with desertification and competition for water resources. And last but not least, it continues to be one of the least economically integrated regions in the world. Infra-regional trade is just a small fraction of countries' total trade, 5.9% of exports and 5.1% of imports. As I said, the COVID-19 crisis has compounded many of the challenges facing the countries in the region and has also demonstrated our interdependence. Indeed, many of the challenges that we face can only be addressed in a durable way in close cooperation between the European Union and its south neighbors. From combating the pandemic to managing migration, from resolving conflicts to countering terrorism, from combating climate change and to ensuring a quick post-pandemic recovery. The EU has also a strategic interest in engaging in its southern neighborhood rather than leaving the initiative to others. On the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the Barcelona process, which was celebrated in Barcelona this year, the European Union adopted a communication and a set of Council conclusions on the renewed partnership with the southern neighborhood. This new agenda for the Mediterranean was launched aiming primarily at addressing effectively our shared challenges and even turn them into opportunities while trying to unleash the region's untapped potential. To be more effective than we have been in the past 25 years, the EU will need to engage more with the countries of the region, invest more in the southern neighborhood, and having a comprehensive roadmap for such strengthened engagement. This communication was also accompanied by an economic and investment plan which proposes to seize the opportunities of the green and digital transition, trying to develop a number of opportunities which are positive for both sides of the Mediterranean. Moving to the more specific commercial and energy aspects, the first thing to say is that one of the key instruments to achieve the objectives of the Barcelona declarations was the possible establishment of a free trade area between the European Union and the South Mediterranean partners. The EU is the region's first economic and trade partner. However, comparing trade relationship between 1995 and 2017, the EU's relative importance as a trade partner has been declining, except for Tunisia and Morocco, which are strongly oriented to a European market. We have a joint interest to continue strengthening the economic cooperation and to create the right conditions for greater investments in the region. The region economic integration between the southern Mediterranean countries, as I said, is still very limited, and it's something on which we will need to work on to overcome this element. One new feature which is that we've started working on since the beginning of the pandemic is the so-called nearshoring. That is to say, bringing the supply chains closer to the countries of destination from more distant locations. This would be not only in the European interest, but could also provide a push for a commercial development in all the neighborhood countries. For this to work, shortening geographical distances also needs to be accompanied by further reducing I would call the administrative distances. So how to overcome the bureaucratic barriers and technical standards, and how to encourage the revision of the Convention on the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Rules of Origin. Looking at the energy aspects, the agenda sets that our energy cooperation should focus on a massive deployment of renewable energy and clean hydrogen production, contributing to the aspirations to have at least 40 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity in the EU neighborhood by 2030. This is a very ambitious goal, but it's something that we will need to work on. We are also looking at the stronger interconnection of the electricity systems to increase the energy efficiency efforts and measures with a focus on building and appliances, and to policies to address the fugitive methane emission from fossil fuel production, transport and use, in line with the framework set in the EU methane strategy. Energy efficiency as part also of the Green Deal, renewable energy, and the regional integration of electricity markets and networks have already been benefiting at bilateral and regional level from a significant EU technical and financial support. With our immediate neighborhoods, we want also to intensify the trade of clean energy. From now to 2030, we estimate that investment in electricity grids will have to double compared with the last decade, reaching more than 50 billion euro per year. Offshore renewable energy is among the renewable technologies with the greatest potential to scale up, with vast potential offered by the European Union seas, including the Mediterranean. With the offshore renewable energy strategy, offshore wind can be scaled up by 5 times and by 20 times by 2050. So the Mediterranean has a great potential of offshore wind energy. Also important is the sector of hydrogen. Taking into account natural resources, physical interconnection, and technology development, the southern neighbors could become priority partners. Existing interconnectors can be repurposed to transport a range of renewable and low-carbon gases, including hydrogen, in a cost-effective way. Cooperation will be key to achieve our objectives, while at the same time accelerate the clean energy transition and the green growth of the Mediterranean. Role is also a relevant role. It's also there for natural gas. Today, natural gas covers about 1/4 of our energy needs. And while natural gas will play a role in the energy transition in the upcoming decades, as recognized by the European Council back in December 2020, the sector needs to start decarbonizing, curbing the methane emissions as an immediate step. The closer we move to our climate neutrality target, the more natural gas will be replaced by renewables and new and low carbon gases, in particular biogas and hydrogen. We also need to be careful about avoiding over-investing in gas, because the risk is that this could lead to stranded assets incompatible with the climate neutrality in 2050. The southern neighbors offer an opportunity for the EU to diversify its gas imports and achieve more energy security, again, in light of the goals that we want to achieve by 2050. One point on the Eastern Mediterranean, it has been said that the estimation for the region is very, very high. 122 trillion cubic feet of gas are hidden under the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Over 60 trillion cubic feet have been discovered so far in Israel, Egypt, Cyprus, and Lebanon, and this already exceeds the Libya's gas reserve. This led to an increased cooperation among most of the Eastern Mediterranean countries that expanded to other governmental sectors, but it has also sparked confrontation among the different countries. You are all well aware of the problem that we are facing in the region between Turkey, Cyprus, and the other countries of the Eastern Mediterranean. The interconnector, the Euro-Asia interconnector between Greece and Cyprus and Israel is a project of common interest of the European Union and could become an energy highway bridging Asia and Europe through the southern neighborhood. Also, the Euro-Africa interconnector between Greece and Cyprus and Egypt is in line with the Memorandum of Understanding on a Strategic Partnership on Energy between the European Union and Egypt. One final word on connectivity, because energy is one of the connectivity priorities in the MENA region. Energy connections, renewable electric networks in the whole region, as well as gas in the Levant, and digital connections can be considered as strategic vectors, with some transport connections, in particular in the broader Gulf Middle East region. For most countries, investment in these areas is politically less controversial as compared to other types of large-scale infrastructure. Enhanced energy and digital connectivity is in line with the European Green Deal and with the European Digital Strategy. It is an important element of recovery and resilience in the post-COVID-19 context. All the picture that I've given concerning the trade and the energy sector are a clear indication of the relevance, the strategic and economic relevance of this region, but also of the many challenges that we have in front of us. And the management of the opportunities and of the challenges is what is really at stake at this moment. This has been at the center of the discussion of the foreign affairs ministers at the beginning of the year, and of the heads of state and government in March, and has been a very strong support by all the heads of state and government to move ahead in this cooperation. The political situation is not always easy, and this is certainly a challenge that we have to face. But as I said, the opportunities that we have in front of us are substantial, and this is something that is good for the northern as for the southern part of the Mediterranean, and can help overcoming the difficult situation of this region that, as I said before, has been made even more acute by the COVID crisis and the social and economic consequences of the crisis. So a big challenge, and in which, and with this I would like to end, the work of the Operation Irini, and the work that has been led by Admiral Agostini, is very relevant in order to stabilize a key piece of the Mediterranean region, that is to say Libya, with all the efforts that we are doing, that the international community is doing, to favor the transition of this country and this country and its stabilization. I will stop there, and I will thank you once again for having invited me to this meeting this afternoon.
Thank you, Ambassador Nino. We are the ones to thank you for your speech. I'm glad to hear that there is a new commitment by the European Union, the European states, towards a better role in to have a more active role in the basin. Since in the last decades, probably Europe appears to be too hesitant in dealing with the Mediterranean, like that. It seems to us that sometimes too many EU member states were extremely unwillingly to deal with the Med, like if the Mediterranean was an issue relevant only for the southern member states. But now we have the External Action Service and High Representative and a Secretary General like you, from both of them from Mediterranean states, and I'm sure they can underline the importance of the basin for all the Union, not only for us Southern members. Thanks again, Ambassador. Now we have Dr. Lapo Pistelli, who is Director of Public Affairs of ENI, Internazionale of Idrocarburi, and also, if I may add, a man with a great experience of vision in the foreign policy debate. Lapo, I can see you, and thank you for being here, and the floor is yours. A te la parola, grazie.
Thank you, Riccardo. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me to this seminar. And I'm happy to acknowledge that in the last 6 months, I've been invited to a number of events that had the Med Basin as a focus of their discussion. I think this is a good sign of a growing awareness of the relevance of this topic. And I hope, even attending this seminar, that this awareness can be spread among the general public, the students, academia, and on top of that, of the policymakers, because it's up to the policymakers to take profit and advantage of this new centrality of the Med Basin. I would like to share with you 4 comments. The first one is a more general, I would say, cultural comment about the basin. I think that, and already Ambassador Sannino and Admiral Agostini mentioned that somehow, that we have to step away from a double, unuseful rhetoric, a bad one and a too good one. The bad rhetoric has considered the Med Basin in the last recent years only as the topic for migration, migrants, both people and whatever you can add on that. And the too good, too easy, good narrative has been about the Med Basin as the, I would say, meeting point of the 3 main religion of this hub, a peaceful meeting of the 3 religions. I'll start by the first one, the bad narrative. It's quite clear that if we go beyond the mantra of migrants invading Italy and Europe, we have to take into account a series of objective data. The first one is that we're living in a very unbalanced world between the North and South. And in this general imbalances between the North and South, there is the imbalances between the EU and Africa. And this imbalances is not only made by the different level of lifestyle and access to wealth, but also is an anagraphic imbalances that was already mentioned by Ambassador Sannino. And I would like to quote a very catchy expression and statement that was done by a former foreign minister of Italy that referring to the EU and Africa was talking about a retirement home facing a nursery. This is about the different average age of the citizens of the EU and the citizens of Africa. And it's not only an anagraphic difference between the EU and Africa, it's also a demographic difference. What we have to take into consideration is what happened in the last 100 years. In 1950, the population of the EU was double than the population of Africa. In the year 2001, the population of both continents were almost the same. And from now to the next 30 years, in 2050, so we're not talking about very remote estimates, but something that is reliable coming from the UN demographic, the population of Africa will be 3 times the population of the EU. So you have to imagine which kind of political earthquake must be a period in which in only 100 years you move from being the double of something to becoming 1/3 of something. So it's something real. And I think also that this bad narrative tends to forget that talking about migration, we are only looking at the edge of an iceberg, because we're living in a world in which every year 250 million people are moving for different reasons, climate crisis, wars, natural disasters, hunger, and so on and so forth. But we are only looking the edge of an iceberg, as I was saying, because we're only looking usually at the migrants coming from Africa and the Middle East to Europe, and the migrants coming from Latin America to the US through Mexico, while more than 90% of these migrants are moving from south to south, from Asia to Asia, from Africa to Africa. And I mean, if you put your feet in African shoes, you will see that this continent is surrounded by the sea, eastward, southward, and westward. And the only way to go to a civilized place where you can hope to have better condition for your lifestyle is northbound, is going north. So if you are able to cross the Sahara and to cross the Med Basin, which remains a little lake, it's quite clear that this is a sort of compulsory destination. So I have to say that we need to take care of the Africans before Africans will take care of us, because this is a sort of destiny, and we can't escape that destiny. And then finally, we tend to forget that Europeans and Italians have been migrants or colonizers since their beginning of their history. What about the two good narrative? The two good narratives that was many times put forward, not only by the Catholic Church, but also by a lot of ONG and so on, tends to forget that starting from the Roman time, the Med Basin has been a place where mainly the two religious civilization, the Christian and the Islamic one, had long cycle of hegemony, one vis-a-vis the other. We tend to forget that, I mean, we have been there to expand since the Roman Empire, but then we suffered, quote unquote, centuries of Islamic dominance when Islam was a civilization far better than the European one in the ninth century, and in the 10th century. And we tend to forget that Islam was in half of Spain, had one of its capital city in Palermo, and so on and so forth. So this is useful because we have to, in order to be rational, to analyze the potential of the Med Basin, we need to escape from rhetoric, because rhetoric do not help to understand which issues are at stake. My second comment is more a geopolitical view on the basin, and it's a very short comment. Usually, so my point is that we have to look at the basin as a whole. So if you divide the basin, we tend to, especially in the past, we tended to focus on the southwest part of the basin. So what is southbound of Italy, between Italy, Spain, France, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. And I'm happy to note that in the last few years, especially focusing on energy, the relevance of the East Med Basin has come up on stage. But we tend also to forget that the Mediterranean Basin includes also the Adriatic Sea, and so another relevant and strategic part of the sea, which is the one that connects Italy and the Western Balkans. So we need to have an holistic approach to this area, not splitting too much the basin in three. Also because we're looking in recent years that these partial parts of the basin are well connected in terms of interest, in terms of energy routes, in terms of energy integration and commercial integration. And the second way to look at the basin is not about the single parts of the basin, but the way you are looking at. Usually, we are used to look at the Med Basin from north to south, from south to north, as I did it. So EU, Africa. But we need to understand, maybe we could switch the map somehow, and to look at the basin in the east-west, west-east direction, because this is a basin which is not only connecting EU and Africa, but is also connecting the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific and the Indian Ocean through Suez. And this is going to explain why the Med Basin has become so strategic and so relevant in the last 10 years. This is the best way to understand why China is the newest actor that is moving quietly, but that is moving in the Med Basin, not only with the Belt Road Initiative, but with thousands and thousands of workers being active in the country of the Southern Basin. Just let me mention two anecdotes. The first one is that is related to Libya at the time of the revolution in 2011, when the United Nations Security Council was on the point to discuss the military operation against Gaddafi, that you will all remember. China took some time to discuss this issue because they had to expat 36,000 Chinese workers that were in Libya. And firstly, they exfiltrated the 36,000 through Greece, Chinese nationals that were working in Libya, and then they were ready to discuss the Libyan issue in the UN Security Council. And the second issue is a quite recent speech of the Foreign Affairs Minister of Algeria, who, addressing to the Algerian students, told them, you have to learn Chinese, which is the language of the future. So this is a basin where we have traditional actors and new actors. Then the third comment is about the commercial relevance of the hub, and I will focus mainly on the Italian perspective. So it's quite clear that since the Phoenicians and the Romans and the Greeks, the Med Basin has always been a commercial hub. It's 25 centuries that this is happening. But what is relevant now, and the rector already mentioned is during his preliminary remarks, is that we are studying, we are looking at a basin which has more or less 1% of the global waters of the planet, but around 15-20% of the maritime traffics. And this data is continuously growing. Since 2014 up to now, the increase of the commercial volume has been 22%. So it's something that is growing so much. Italy is there, but in my opinion, we could do much more than we are doing, or we could exploit in a better way what we are. Just to give you a series of numbers that I think are useful to understand the Italian perspective about the basin and the role that we could play. First of all, we rely, I would say we depend on maritime trade routes as no one could imagine. Think about these two numbers. We are exporting through maritime lines 79% of our goods and services, 96% of the goods and services that are going extra EU, extra European Union, and we are importing through maritime sea lanes 84% of goods and services. And if we look only at the goods coming extra European Union, this percentage rises up to 99.4. So we are relying completely on the sea lanes. We are importing almost 50% of our coal, crude, gas, and we are exporting outside the European Union 35% to United States, 30% to China, 15% to Turkey, and 7.5% to Russia. And the sea economy, the so-called sea economy, is one of the fundamental components of the Italian picture. If you look at the total volume of our maritime transports, we are the fourth European power after Denmark, Germany, and France. If you look at the added value of this volume of maritime transports, we are third after UK and Germany. If you look at the people employee in this branch of economy, we are the first in Europe. If you look at the number of companies or operators working in the sea economy, Italy is number 4, and we have more than 1,700 small, big, and medium companies working on that. If you move to the harbor activities and logistics, I'm sorry to say that Italy comes only at the 6th place. Far away from us are UK, by far the first, Germany, France, Netherlands, and Spain. Look at the numbers. The harbor of Trieste is handling 62 million tons per year. Genova is handling 52 million tons per year. Livorno 37 million tons per year. But the third Italian harbor, so Trieste, is only the fifth in the Med Basin. Tangeri, Marsiglia, Barcellona, and Atene are ahead of us. And this sounds strange if you look at the map and if you look at the geographical role and place that Italy could play. When you move to the shipyard, so the capacity to manufacture every kind of ship and cruise ship, private yacht, we are by far the first, either in terms of added value and people employee, even though we have only one very big multinational company, which is Fincantieri. If you move to the private yacht and super yacht and cruise ship, we are by far the third economy in the world. I'm not talking about only the European Union, but in the world, especially in the super luxury yacht, where we have the first three companies in the world, Azimut, Benetti, and Ferretti Group. And finally, if you look at fishery, that was mentioned before, Italy comes at the fourth place after Spain, France, and UK in terms of volume and value, and we come second after Spain in terms of people employee in fishery. So this has to say this is to understand, to underline how relevant the sea economy is actually for Italy and how we could perform better, taking profit of our geopolitical role there. Fourth and final comment is about the energy. Stefano Sannino said a lot of things about that. Very interesting. He explained very well not only the existing situation in the Med Basin, but also the potential and which are the forecasts and the strategies of the EU about that. I would like only to remind that we have a lot of gas in the Adriatic Sea, in the offshore Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Israel, and Cyprus, and there are actually researches for gas and hydrocarbons in Greece and in Montenegro. Italy is connected from the south from two different pipelines, the Transmed coming from Algeria and Tunisia and going to Sicily, and the Green Stream coming from Libya and going to Sicily again. And from those two pipelines, we take a relevant portion of our energy security as a country, and we provide as a gateway for Europe a portion of the energy security for the whole continent. But as it has already been mentioned, the big relevance of the East Med Basin that came up on stage 11 years ago, 12 years ago, when the first big discovery in Cyprus, Aphrodite, was done. Then that discovery, which is still stranded under the sea, not developed, was followed nearby by the two Israeli discoveries of Tamar and Leviathan. And then last in line, but bigger, the biggest discovery in the Med Sea has been done by Eni in Zohr, offshore Egypt, in 2015. So what is interesting is that in the East Med Basin, where we have not easy relations among the countries which are facing the basin, energy is becoming or could become a factor for integration, for energy integration, but more than that, on top of that, for political integration. We have an excellent success story, which is the gas diplomacy between Israel and Egypt that was disrupted only during the few years of the Morsi presidency, but then went back as usual. And now, I mean, you don't give a flag to the molecule. And so Israel and Egypt are successfully trading gas and electricity, and this is really good for the region, not mentioning Jordan and the National Palestine Authority. But we have still a confrontation, as what was mentioned before, between Turkey and Cyprus, and we see how Turkey is posturing its foreign policy position in the Med Basin, becoming one of the most relevant actors, not only in the East Med part of the basin, but also in Libya and cruising, I would say, in the southern part of the Mediterranean Sea. There will be also a comment about electric cables and data cables. Don't forget data cables, but I'm not truly competent in commenting about that. So a final comment. There are no easy conclusions to draw, but I would like to just a couple of bullet points. First of all, the Mediterranean Sea is not anymore, maybe it was never that way, a mare internum, as the Romans were used to call it, is not a mare internum and is not either a mare nostrum. Now it's a very crowded sea. It's a very crowded sea. It's crowded because there are around 20 countries which are facing the Med Basin, which have strong vested interest in being there. But this is one of the only global waters in which you have at the same time the presence of all the regional and global powers, because you have Turkey and Russia, and you have also US and China. All of the relevant guys are there. Is a sea with a lot of dispute maritime boundaries. Not all of them, even though there are disputes, have given a trigger for conflicts, but they are dispute, they are not settled. But more than that, it is a sea where we have a really enormous range of economic, energy, and political opportunities. So my final statement is: it's not up to me to say where we have to fix the threshold of our ambition, what do we have to do as a country. But it's quite clear that this hub, which is a political hotspot, is a hub where Italy, which has not the role to play geopolitical games far away from its boundaries, far away in the world, would have the political weight and the political capacity to play the game in the Med Basin, taking into account the national interest, because for all of the reasons that I mentioned before, we have all the documents in rule, I would say, all the proper papers to do that role. But I hope that this kind of debate will help the policymakers to reshape the agenda and to give a proper ambition to the country in order to have a relevant role in the Mediterranean basin. Thank you.
Grazie, Lapo. Thanks, Director Pistelli, for your vision and your speech, and which I do agree on. And listening to you, also to the data, I remember Europe at global level from a demographic point of view in 1950 represented 22% of the global population. And now we are running around 10% with a aging population. Because not only the numbers, absolute numbers, but also the demographic composition of the population we have. And thanks also for the other data and for your final comments, your sum up, extremely important. I think that if I can get behind the information, is that is the importance not to rely on fixed perception of this. Is never from a historical perspective, is always, from a historical point of view, is always a huge mistake to rely on fixed perception of culture, civilization, and regions, especially in a period like this, because they become easily outdated, and especially for a sea that is increasingly interconnected like Mediterranean, and as you mentioned. So thanks, davvero, Lapo, thanks a lot. We now turn back to the in-person, in-presence, face-to-face presentation. We have the third speaker, Fabio Tambone, who is the head of External International Relations of ARERA. ARERA is the Italian Authority for Energy, Networks and Environment, based in Milano. Fabio, you have the floor. I know that you have a presentation with PowerPoint presentation.
Yes,
please.
Thank you. So I wait for the presentation. In the meantime, I would like to thank Professor Redei, Università Cattolica, all the guests and the speakers so far. And before the presentation is online, I would like to take note of the last, let's say, speeches, where I can put on the table three or four main messages. First is that we really have to think to invest in Africa. I think it's time. As we have already said, Mediterranean has always been a land of commerce, trade, but now it's time to invest in Africa. Others are already doing it in a very smart and speedy way, like Chinese, for example, as Mr. Pistelli just mentioned. That Mediterranean is not only the South Shore, but it's also Balkans. Our authority is very, very active in the Balkans. There is a process that's been mentioned by Mr. Pistelli, which is the West Balkan 6 process. Big pipelines and projects, which I'm going to mention, are passing through the Balkans, and it's a key region for Italy and for Europe. Third, of course, energy is always something, it's always, let's say, an opportunity for development, for economic development. But this is a very unique moment. We have been talking about gas, but gas, you know, it's already perceived in Europe as a transitory, let's say, source, since we are already looking at the future, which is renewable sources, hydrogen. Everyone now is talking about the next sources, and now gas, it's an issue for Europe. Fourth, that the message from Mr. Pistelli is that we are not alone in this world. Of course, it's a key issue, and I think it's a particular moment for our country, where we really have the opportunity to lead the presence of Europe in the Mediterranean Sea. So I will go now through my presentation with some main, just to let the people understand what is an independent authority, because not all knows about this, and we are a sort of, just to use a very simple language, a sort of referee of a football match. We are thought to be to drive and to manage the energy market in the beginning. After in the recent years, we've been called to also to manage the water and the waste market, which are markets are very critical. Also from the geopolitical point of view, mainly water, which is one of the key issues for Mediterranean geopolitics in the next future. We are not on the state balance. We are, financed by the regulated companies, and we are, of course, as a main scope, we try to regulate assets in order to protect final customers. Going through this very long messages, two main issues. We have just mentioned that we need to invest in Africa. How do we make this in a very critical region? There is always this issue of political instability. Look what has been happening very recently in Palestine yesterday or 2 days ago. We work as a regulator with the Authority of Palestine, Energy Authority of Palestine, with the Energy Authority of Israel. We work with all of them. And we see that energy is a bridge because it's a necessity. So this is the starting point we have to look. And through a sort of, let's say, stable, harmonized set of rules, the good news is that we really can help investments. Investment need, when we talk about investment, it's not only about big pipelines, big projects, also small projects. Just to give you a number, I've been recently spoken with someone in the ministry of energy in Israel, and they are building new cities. When you build a new city, you have to think at everything. You have to think at builds, energy, and any kind of services. So how do we do that? We need rules. We need stable rules. Yes, this is where we are now. I think my colleagues has already been mentioned, for example, all the interconnections that Italy has today from the electricity point of view. Two very recent are the interconnection cable with Montenegro, built by Terna, and there is a big talk on a possible new interconnection with Tunisia. Why this interconnection with Montenegro is important? Because it opens the way to Italy to create and to work in the Balkan energy electricity market. It's a very important step forward. This is what has been mentioned before, but just to give you an idea, the very recent and very much discussed project is TAP, is Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, the most recent one. And this project has been chosen, among others, because this project was going to bring gas also in the Balkan region. That's why Balkan is a very important area for Europe. And but now when we talk about other projects like EastMed and others, the problem is now what we always talk with companies. When you build a new project, it has to be demand-driven. Do we have enough demand for gas to build new projects? This is an issue for Europe, because at the end of the day, who pays this project is the final customers. So for us, the main worry is that when we get new demand for projects, we need to be sure that there is enough demand for that project, for that gas. So now, for example, TAP has 10 billion cubic meters of capacity. Someone was declaring that it has to be doubled. Do we have enough demand in the next years to get this capacity in Italy and bring it to Europe? We don't know that. So this is it's a big point for us. This is what has been happening in the last years. For example, if you look at the last numbers, in the last 11 years, we had plus 42% of total capacity. Just to give you an idea, capacity is like an highway when you can put more cars, okay? So when you build new capacity, you can bring more gas. So this is what is happening in the last 11 years. So big gas capacity has been put on the table. So, coming to Mediterranean, what is happening today is this magic word, transition, okay? Everyone talk about sustainability, transition, but it means many things. And you have different forces, companies that would like to invest in new renewable sources, in new electricity interconnection, in new gas pipelines. At the end of the day, we have this magic word, which is sustainability transition. So how do we deal with that? If I can imagine a possible future, of course, renewable sources will be gaining, let's say, the future. But look what happened in Italy. In the last 20 years, Italy was one of the biggest builder of renewable energies in the world. The problem is now is that in the final bill that you receive at home, you pay one part of that investment. So our families are paying that. So when you build new investment, you have always been attentive on who's going to pay that. That's our worry as regulators. So now, if we look at Africa, at Mediterranean, when you build big interconnection projects, for example, for electricity, they are very much costly. So since we have big lands in Africa, one of the big magic words is generated distribution. So bring electricity through renewable energies close to demand. So this is another issue, and technologies, digitalization are really now one of the biggest, let's say, words that we are really dealing with in this moment. I've been until February Secretary General of this organization, which is MEDREG, which gets together all the independent authorities of all Mediterranean. And MEDREG, just for your information, is trying to really harmonize rules to facilitate energy investments. In this organization, as I mentioned before, we have also the Ministry of Libya, we have the Authority of Palestine, we have the Authority of Israel, and many others. So you can have a look at the website if you're curious. Okay, so this is what I've been just mentioned. This is the organization. We have the president, by the way, is the Albanian authority. Then we have 3 vice presidents, which is the president of the regulator of Morocco, the president of authority of Egypt. We know very well that ENI is exploring in Egypt. We have made very recently an important event here with the help of Professor Redelli, Professor Mekanji, with the president of the Egyptian Authority of Gas, which was here at Cattolica. So now what is happening in that land? That big gas is coming, but you don't use and you don't help your economy with new gas if you don't build local infrastructures. That's why the energy regulators are important to help investment on land. So gas pipeline, but also distribution lines. So this is the big world around MEDREG. We have other big organizations around the world. We have big investment funds from Germany, from United States, so as Mr. Pistelli, I think, was mentioning, Mediterranean Sea, it's a land of everyone now. So everyone is paying attention to this region. So just to go to my conclusions, this is something that we have to look. If you look on the left side of this presentation, it's all things that have been mentioned so far. So we have magic interconnections, so we have to build new interconnections. We have to integrate, when you build a new plant of, wind plant or solar plant, you need to put this plant in the system. So putting this plant in the system means cost, means that you are going to fill a plant. You have to deal with other competitors, and this is an issue. So it's not just you build a plant. So this is an issue also for Africa, for Mediterranean. From what I know, Morocco now is investing 3 or 4 billion euro in new renewable energy. When we have talked with the Minister of Energy of Morocco, we have told him that it's not all about investments, it's how you place that investment in your social economy. So this is an issue. It's not to replicate many errors that in Italy you have made as well. I come from a region, Puglia, which is a region where I think there was the most investments in renewable energies maybe in the world, but now the problem is that we have no space. We need to leave space to land. So we have interconnection that are already filled, and so this is an issue. So when we make this investment, we have to look on what is going to happen after. Now it's always also a word of hydrogen. What is hydrogen? Hydrogen is a clean gas, okay? So now everyone is talking about hydrogen. It has to be the future, but we always have to look how this source will be placed in the future. And of course, big attention also from our intelligence services is placed to digitalization and cybersecurity. Of course, energy infrastructure are critical for any country. So now what we do is to really try to understand what kind of means and tools can be put in place to better monitor the functioning of infrastructure to avoid any problems in the future. Just to give you an idea, when I spoke, just before concluding, just an anecdote. I don't know if you can say this in English. When I spoke to my old friend, director of gas for Israel, they were talking with the Cyprus colleagues, and they told me that they were doing many hours of meetings because the level of security in Israel is completely different from the level of security in Cyprus. So they were trying to deal on what was the good level of security for both of them. This is an issue. So to conclude, our scope as regulators is to try to to work on a regulatory convergence. When you have the same rules, you can play the same game. It's like football. If you don't have the same rules, you don't play the same game. That's what is happening now in the Mediterranean Sea. Big opportunities, big challenges, big confusion. So our main effort is to put the same rules for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Fabio, for your comments. And if I may sum up, is quoting the famous sentence, "It's the economy, stupid." Which is back to the basics. Go back to understand how affordable and feasible are these projects. For many years in Europe, we discuss about diversification of energy providers, but of course, all diversification means also to enhance cost and expenses, and so. Thanks for your good lessons to go back to the basic of economy. That at the end there is always a balance to take in account. So we have now the last presentation by a colleague, a professor. I don't know if we have to say a lot because now professor is not a title, is an ambiguous title in the public opinions, but never mind. This is one of the best professor on geopolitics and active implemented geography, you may say this word. It's Professor Paolo Serrari, who is the director of the Master in Geopolitics and Global Security at University La Sapienza in Rome. Thanks for being here and for traveling from Rome to Milano, and the floor is yours for your comment. I think you need the switch for... Oh. Grazie, Miraglio. Yeah, it is. Okay, thanks. The technician to charge the new presentation. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Riccardo, and I'm honored to be here in this prestigious university. And as you said before, I teach geopolitics, so I will try to give a geopolitics overview on Med Basin focused on maritime economy and maritime transport and global transport. As you say, Lapo Pistelli said, and other colleagues said before, geopolitically speaking, Med Basin has changed its role during the last 30 years after the Soviet default. And in the same way, at that period, Med Basin changed its role also in transport system, in transport global system. And that's, I will give you some point of view about Global Maritime Center, Med Basin as Global Maritime Center and Strategic. about geopolitical choke-off points, about the competition versus northern range ports, about China interests, and about future scenarios and risks. So this is a book. It changed my life, my academic life. Adalberto Vallega was an Italian geographer, and in the 19th, he wrote a book, Geografia delle strategie marittime, in which he proposed a development stage approach, speaking about port and traffic and routes development. A merchant stage in the 18th centuries with colonial route, a paleo-industrial stage in the first part of 19th century, and more interesting is the industrial stage with that identify new ocean pivot as the colonial power as UK, and the Atlantic Ocean was considered the oceanic pivot in the world. The neo-industrial stage has seen the enter in the global field of USA, you know, and the predominance of oil routes, and the growth also of the industrial ports with MIDAS, maritime industrial development areas. So the port is now an industrial area, not only commercial area. The trans-industrial first phase and the trans-industrial second phase give us a new representation of the maritime transport in the global world. The pivot shift to Far East, not only oil routes, but container routes. The port became a business and a financial center. You have to face with new problems as the gigantism of the ships, and with the oligopoly of shipping companies that decide which port have to be successful and which not. And this is very important, also geopolitically speaking. So we have seen that the oceanic pivots moved from Atlantic to Pacific during the industrial stage and to Indian Ocean during the trans-industrial stage. And which is the role of the Mediterranean in this trans-industrial stage? Mediterranean stopped to be only a sea basin between land, between Africa and Europe and Middle East. But the Mediterranean basin became a transit sea between oceans, between Indian Oceans and Atlantic Oceans, and become an important actor in the global maritime flows. I think the biggest, the most important actor. This is a graphic with the growth of, except 2020, obviously, the growth of commercial flows in the there are some problems. Okay, in the world, and the maritime trade by a cargo type, container is growing after 1990. And the growth is also obviously for Asia. Asia became the most output areas of commercial flows, commercial traffic. Okay, and this slide is interesting because shows us how what is the predominance of Far East port system. The 71% of container leave Far East ports. And the flow is westbound, from east to west. And follow this blue line. We named a round world route. And why it's so important for Mediterranean, this route? Because Mediterranean, as you can see in the center of the map of the planisphere, is the transshipment areas, is the place, is the sea where there is a dialogue between global market and regional market. And so Mediterranean Basin became, after 90s, in the 21st century, became the center of the global maritime traffic. That line, that blue line, has 4 choke points. So we have to know that this route is particularly significant on the side of regional and global security, because there are 4 choke points: Malacca Strait, Bab el-Mandeb Strait, south of the Red Sea, Suez Canal, and recently we have seen why. It's named choke points, and Gibraltar. Why we tell often about the centrality of Mediterranean? Because the 70% of Chinese exports, Chinese trade with Europe is in the Mediterranean, because it's a Middle East gateway, because it's a Balkan area gateway, and for commercial flows from Africa. So the centrality of Mediterranean has this origin. And we can see in this slide that the 33% of traffic is produced by container. The container, we have to remind, is the richest market in maritime economy, more than tanker or bulks, general bulks. The container flows generate the highest added value. So it's important to see the container market to evaluate Med Basin economy. And this is the growth in last 10 years, in the decade 2009-2019. And the Mediterranean generates a really important increase of traffic in southbound direction and northbound direction. So it's not an area where we can say there are periods of crisis. No, increasing traffic in last 10 years, increasing data about 4 main ports: Piraeus, Valencia, Tanger Med, and Port Said, due to Chinese investment. It's true. But see, 5 million containers for more or less all 4 ports It's a great result because the 4 ports now have the sum of containers, the same sum of containers that the 2 major ports of the northern range, as Rotterdam and Hamburg. I said before, this due also to China presence and China investment in Suez, in Piraeus, in Vado Ligure, in Algeciras, and also in Valencia. And what about Italy? Italy has a good opportunity for the other modality of maritime traffics, not only as a gateway of global traffic, not only in transshipment modality, but also in short sea shipping. As you can see, for Europe, Mediterranean have the 31% of the total amount of short sea shipping in Europe. And in Mediterranean, Italy has 41%. And this is a very interesting data because Italy in short sea shipping can do more and can reinforce its leading position. Especially because there is a significant activity of reshoring after the pandemic. So the reshoring model will push the short sea shipping in the future. What about Northern Range? About Northern Range, there is a real battle between med ports and Northern Range ports. One of the arguments of discussion in transport geography, there are colleagues as Theo Notteboom in Antwerpen that has written lot of pages about competitiveness of Northern Range ports related to southern ports. And you can see that even if transshipment modality has reduced the gap between med ports and Northern Range ports, the gap between the major 4 ports of the Northern Range, Rotterdam, Antwerp, Hamburg, and Bremen, the difference is high, is still high, with Valencia, Piraeus, Algeciras, and Barcelona. So that's why, but why? Because of infrastructures. Med ports is blocked by mountains, and infrastructures are difficult to have improved. So the 4 North European ports are still more and more in an advanced position respect med ports. And this is the result that the areas of influence of Northern Range includes also Northern Italy and North Central Italy, also Livorno port. And the competition area is focused on Northern Italy and on Alps areas. And this is the problem of competitiveness of Italian and Western med ports. But there are also some opportunities. Because according to SRM, this study, the strategic center in Mediterranean is moving near Italy. And we have to look to the Trieste port development. It's really interesting because Trieste port has been the share of 15% has been acquired by Hamburg Port, Hamburg municipality. Is a geopolitical decision because USA has decided probably for us out Chinese interests in European interests and Hamburg interest. But Trieste has is a deep water sea, respects northern range ports that have the problem of the sand, that with climate change, the sand will create problems to the water, to deep water of that port. So Trieste have 18, 19 deep water and is the perfect port for mega ships. So to front off the gigantism development of the ship. And Trieste is the perfect port 6.0. Global relationship, intermodality. Trieste has a good intermodality system with railways to Austria and Germany. Relation with research center, with university, innovation, free zone area, and sustainability. And which are the risks, to conclude my speech, for Mediterranean? The Cape Town route. During the pandemic year, oil price fell down, and this was most convenient for shipping companies to the Cape Town routes instead of Suez routes for the fees transit of Suez. That is high, really high for the shipping companies. And other risk is Belt and Road Initiative, land corridors. Now they have more or less the 2% of the market share in transcontinental traffic from China to Europe. But in 2030, probably will be the 12%. And this is a risk for the Mediterranean, obviously. You can see the rise of data of 2020. And finally, the Arctic routes. This is the final risk. Personally, I don't think that there is a real risk because Arctic routes is focused on Russian Arctic coast. There are no markets, there are no economies to develop. So probably Arctic routes will concern exclusively the LNG traffic between Yamal Peninsula, Sabeta Port, and the Northern Range ports in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo, for your lecture and extremely clear presentation. And let me say that as a professor, as an historian, I like when you remark the importance of history for any geopolitical scenario, when you have the historical approach to the evolution of the maritime commercial sea lanes. And this is something I'm also glad you underline the importance of choke points that my students are always stressing them for that. So many things to commence, but since time is running out, I will not see. If I understood that, I think that everyone understood why we spoke about this new centrality of the Mediterranean today, from different perspectives, from the energy, from the maritime commercial sea lanes. And and we understand that Professor Sellari is supporting the Arctic, the Arctic bird, the l'orso polare, the polar bird, because if survived, there is no climate change, and so no Arctic route, and it's better for us. But we saw how the Mediterranean basin is changing in its interconnection in a global global changing international system, from the demographic to the energy to the geopolitical to the economic ones, and that's oblige us to be, I would say, more reactive than ever in being able to adapt ourselves. And being Italians, sometimes we know that we're not extremely reactive. And also Europe, reactivity is not a word I would like to associate to the European Union. But despite all we know about this interesting evolution. And of course, this evolution, economic, energy, commercial, maritime commercial, cannot forget to put at the center the human being. So we cannot solve the problem. We cannot really connect the Mediterranean to the evolution of the international system without solving the huge unbalancing that we have among the two shores, the northern and the southern shore, and try to do our best. And I do believe that Europe should do more to try to foster a vision, a cooperative vision, an holistic vision for offering a security architecture, an inclusive security architecture. And I think that just Europe is the only actor that in the basin can offer this inclusive perspective. Say that we are at the end of our time slot, and thanks again our speaker, Ambassador Sannino, Dr. Lapo Pistelli, Dr. Fabio Tambone from ARERA here on my left, and Professor Paolo Sellari, my colleague, on my right. And of course, let me thank all the persons, the technician of the Catholic University that supported us, Professor Alessia Mercange from the Sapienza University, who started this initiative, and Ambassador Fabio Agostini, the operational commander of Operation EUNAVFOR Forward. Oh, sorry, not yet. Admiral, sorry. That's, I don't know if it's better to be ambassador or admiral. For sure, better than being a professor. But that's for Admiral Fabio Agostini and his staff. And this is it has been an interesting step towards ShadeMed. I'm sure that ShadeMed will be the final, extremely interesting venue of this project. So thanks to all of you here in presence, face-to-face at home, and thanks for him. Bye. See you.